Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and anyone familiar with the show knows who that is on the right side of your screen. He's a radical for capitalist. He's an objectivist. He's a philosopher. He's also an author of numerous articles and books, including his latest, Red Meat Village. He's the wonderful Andrew Bernstein, and he's here today to talk to us about, it's all about Eve, or no, it's just all about Eve. That's what we're going to do. So what's happened, Professor?
Well, good to be back on your show, Michael, as we and everybody out there in Rational Egoist land. We're continuing our film series, right?
Yes.
One of the things we've been doing is analyzing some of the great films in film history, and All About Eve. Wow, I mean, first of all, what a vehicle for the great Bette Davis, and two, the movie's really all about women, and so it's really a fascinating story, isn't it?
Yeah, it really was. So I'm on 4 hours sleep. I just got done doing another show. So I'm going to let you just take off with this. All About Eve. It was your suggestion. I loved it. My girlfriend liked it, and she's not a big movie buff. So you go ahead.
All right. Thank you. I mean, we're a couple of dudes, and we generally like these testosterone-driven, heroic films. I mean, I was weaned on John Wayne westerns. We got to do a John Wayne western.
Oh yeah,
there's so many of them that are so good. But we criticize Hollywood all the time, and properly so, especially today when they put out a lot of woke garbage. But over the decades, they've made some really good movies too, and we've analyzed some of them. Judgment at Nuremberg is a classic. I think The Train is a great movie. Jeremiah Johnson's a great movie. We've done some. What was the last one we did after Jeremiah Johnson?
Oh my goodness!
I
don't remember. Why don't I remember? It was something good. We just did something good. Spartacus.
Oh yeah, of course. Thank you. Yeah, Spartacus. Can't get more testosterone driven than Spartacus. About a gladiator uprising. But All About Eve. This is like I hesitate to even insult it by calling it a chick flick, but it's a great movie. It is all about Eve, brilliantly played by Ann Baxter. It's just as much all about Margot, even more brilliantly played by the immortal Bette Davis. But this movie's all about women. This is about what it means to be a woman. We discussed Jeremiah Johnson. It's all about men. How men can and sometimes prefer to be loners. The way they interact, even good men, they may not say much, but they interact and relate to each other in different ways. Like Jeremiah Johnson with Grizzly Adams, or Backlaw. I'm sorry, Grizzly Adams is a different character. Backlaw. But anyway, this is all about women, right? And the story is just fascinating, because here's Eve, and big spoiler alert, guys. Here's Eve Harrington, this wide-eyed young ingenue, and she's a hero worshiper of the great Margot Channing, this very talented and successful Broadway actress. Bette Davis, to me, Michael and everybody, Bette Davis may be the greatest film actress of all time. I mean, she's got to be on anybody's shortlist. It gives us just a stunning performance in this film, and it's some kind of artistic crime that she did not win an Oscar for this.
You put her above Katharine Hepburn?
At least as good. Katharine Hepburn, nobody plays a dizzy broad the way Katharine Hepburn does. And similarly, nobody plays a bitch the way Bette Davis.
You're going to get us canceled by everybody.
We love women. We love women. Even if they're dizzy broads, like Katharine Hepburn, brilliantly in Bringing Up Baby.
Today on the Rational Egoist, our special guest, Mr. Archie Bunker.
No. That dude was a racist. But anyhow, I think Bette Davis is as good as anybody. Maybe better. But anyhow, so. Here's Eve Harrington, played by Ann Baxter. She professes to be this innocent, wide-eyed girl. She just wants to, be she's a hero worshiper of Margot Channing. She's introduced to Margot and she has a sad story about coming out of poverty, and her husband was killed in World War II, and everybody believes her, and Margot hires her to be like her assistant. And then we start the one person who doesn't trust her, right from the start is Margot's assistant. What's her name? Bertie.
Yeah.
Bertie Coonan, played by Thelma Ritter. And by the way, this is the only movie in film history where you have 4 actresses all nominated for Oscars. Ann Baxter and Bette Davis were nominated for Best Actress, and Thelma Ritter as Bertie, and Christine Holm as is that her first name? I think first name,
I don't know.
Celeste Holm, nominated as Karen Richards. Well, they were both nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Anyhow, so we start to see that Eve is insinuating herself into Margot's life. She's taking over. She's trying to become Margot Channing. She's trying to take over Margot's role, take over her relationships. She gets the playwright's wife to Margot's understudy is pregnant. She gets the playwright's wife to recommend her to be Margot's understudy without Margot even realizing it. You see her manipulating her way into Margot's life. She even tries to steal Margot's boyfriend.
But you don't know that, right? You don't know that that's what's going on.
Well, I could see it. I could see it in the story as it.
Come on, the first time you ever saw it, you knew right away that she was a phony?
Not right away, but I started to get suspicious as Margot got suspicious, which was pretty pretty early on. I think the evidence was there. She's so sugary sweet. She's so she just like humbles herself. She's so self-deprecating, humbles herself before Margot. But I get your point. Michael, because all of Margot's friends, her boyfriend, the director, Bill, the playwright, Lloyd Richards, his wife, Karen, they all support Eve. They all think Margot's being paranoid about it. The only one who really sees it was Bertie,
and Margot evidently has a history of going bitchy, right?
Well, you don't hire Bette Davis to play that role if she doesn't. Margot is the greatest actress in the world. She's 40 years old. She's at that point where she's starting to lose. She's still very attractive. She's still a beautiful woman, but she's starting to lose her looks, and she is 100% paranoid about it. That she's losing her look. She's not young anymore. Eve is young. Eve's going to take her roles. Eve's going to take Bill from her. She's absolutely paranoid about it. And what a performance. She puts on. You should buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride. She says about at the party. But Eve is young, and they said, "Well, what is she? What kind of what are you going to get in a drink?" And Bette Davis says, "A milkshake." It's just you're a dialogue guy, Michael. The dialogue in this movie is stunning. I mean, it says one.
I was actually thinking while I was watching it, it occurred to me, and I don't know, but the dialogue was really good back then because the movies couldn't rely on explosions. Right?
Yeah, and special effects. No special effects, right.
And there was a character that you haven't mentioned yet, but the guy who actually begins the movie telling the story, the film critic.
Addison DeWitt. Yeah,
Addison DeWitt.
George Sanders won a Best Supporting Oscar for that.
Yeah, he did a masterful job. And, there's this, the girl Eve gets introduced to Margot at the beginning by Margot's friend. Who is the wife of the director,
the playwright.
the playwright. So, and she introduces her, and then ends up, Margot gives Eve a job, and she's doing such a bang up job, and then Eve tells her, "Oh, why don't you get me to be her understudy? Put in a word so I can be her understudy." And lo and behold, it happens when nobody tells Margot.
Yeah, yeah. Eve is a brilliant schemer, and she's worming her way into Margot's life, and she gets to be the understudy. Now, one of the interesting things in the film is that this is an early role for Marilyn Monroe. Right, as Miss Caswell, and Addison DeWitt is pushing her as his protege. So he's setting up a reading, and Margot's gonna read with her. But behind Margot's back, they set up the reading for Eve, and this is when Margot's suspicions become confirmed. When she gets to the reading and it's already over. It was supposed to be at 4:30, and they did it at 2:30. And Addison says, Margot asks, "Well, how was Miss Caswell?" And Addison DeWitt said, "Well, nobody could possibly remember." Why not? Well, because Eve was just brilliant. He just throws all of these positive adjectives about Eve's performance. And here's where Margot realizes there's a conspiracy here going on behind her back to push Eve into stardom or towards getting prominent roles on Broadway, and getting the roles that she would get, in Lloyd Richard's play, and she just explodes, and it goes from, for Margot, it goes from bad to worse, because her friends think she's being paranoid and overly dramatic. And Karen, the playwright's wife, again, the Celeste Holm character, was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her role. She sets it up so that they're away on for the weekend in their country home up in Connecticut, and then the car runs out of gas, so they can't get to the train station. And Margot is going to miss her performance. Margot never misses her performance. As Eve says to Karen, "Well, the show must go on." And Karen said, "No, Margot must go on. She needs the adulation. She needs the applause. She needs the..." Anyway, so she misses the performance. Eve, the understudy, goes on. Eve knows the scheme that Karen has done to keep Margot in Connecticut. Yeah. She gets out the word. All the theater critics, including Addison DeWitt, they're all there. They're all the next day's newspapers are all glowing with their reviews of Eve's performance. But the worst, of course, is Addison. And Addison is just pure evil. He's as bad as Eve, maybe worse. But if that's possible. But his column is just, and he puts this in Eve's words, and maybe Eve said it, maybe she did it. But Addison's column, he's an influential theater critic, is just acid towards Margot, that she's been standing in the way of young talent, for years, and and it's time for her to step aside for you. And here's Margot, who's paranoid about getting too old already, and here's the prominent theater critics say she's, in effect, she's too old. She's got to stand aside and stop blocking the way for younger talent. And and Margot explodes. Here's where everybody realizes who Eve is. Not just Margot, but Bill, her boyfriend.
Now, Eve did the interview, right? That's when she did the interview?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did the interview. And Addison's column that included Eve's interview was just acid towards Margot. And here's where Bill, the director, boyfriend of Margot, Lloyd, the playwright, Karen, the playwright's wife, here's where they realize that Eve is in league with Addison DeWitt, and she stuck a knife in Margot's back, and because she wants to get the role in Lloyd's new play. She's in her 20s. The character's in her 20s. Margot's 40. She wants that role. She'll do anything. She'll do anything to get the role. So She attempts to black. Great scene in the ladies' room.
That's that scene. She played such a great evil woman.
Oh yeah.
Because at first
Yeah.
she's telling her, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
She's so sweet. So
Yeah,
sweet. Right? Yeah.
my words were twisted. I can't believe this. I feel so bad. And then when she then if you can put, then she brings up, if you could put a word in with your husband, to give me this role. And then the Karen character realizes what's going on, but then she switches like pure sociopath.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be a shame if they found this out. Now, but here's what I found interesting, and we're going to get into her manipulations there, because it's very very interesting and just a masterful performance. But what I was thinking,
Anne Baxter was nominated for Best Actress also.
Yeah, there were a few angles as I'm watching the movie that I'm thinking a few ways it could go. Either Margot was really just an absolute evil person who's just being horrible to this young girl who just adores her. That was one angle. Then I thought maybe they were going in the direction of she's a stalker who's stalking Margot, like she's like in love with her, wants to be her. But it turned out it wasn't either of those. It was just she wants to replace her. Like she wants to be the star.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was really good. I thought it was great the way that she played
great
that.
performance. Yes. She's so sweet until she isn't. And in the ladies' room, she's all contrite at first about the interview with Addison. Like you said, Addison twisted my words and everything. And so Karen forgives her. And then she says, as Karen's getting ready to leave, if you could put in a word with Lloyd, your husband, for me to play Cora, and light bulb goes off for Karen. That's what this is all about. You want that part, and she says, and Karen says, to over my dead body. This is all an act. She's an actor. Eve's an actress. And that's when Eve lowers the mask and you see the psychopath come out. And she said, it would be a terrible shame, for your friendship, your long-term friendship with Margot, if Margot found out the behind-the-scenes machinations that enabled me to go on as her understudy and give that performance. And Karen realizes, of course, your relationship with Margot will be kaput. It's going to be shot. And she goes back. She doesn't agree to do it, but she doesn't say she won't either. She goes back to, Eve leaves. Karen goes back to the table with Margot and the two men. And by the way, before I forget, earlier in the movie, when Eve is getting Karen to do things for her, and she said, well, what about Bill, the director, and Lloyd, the playwright? Do you remember what Karen says?
No.
They'll do as they're told. Which is a great template for male-female relations. The men will do as they're told. Karen says. But we'll come back to that. We got to, because this is all about women, and we got to circle back to that. So Karen goes back to the table, and here's Margot, who's given this. Betty Davis give this beautiful mini speech when they're in the car about the real, female's real role is being a woman, and here you see how Margot has grown through the course of this story. She says, Bill announces they're getting married. Margot's happy. She's got the man. Who's younger than her, of course. Nice plot point. He's 8 years younger. He's 8 years younger, so that Margot's always reminded, I'm aging. He loves me now, but what about when I'm 50? Margot's obsessed with the aging process and fading beauty, as many women are, especially beautiful women, and above all actresses. But now Margot's more relaxed. She's in love. She realizes Bill loves her, even as she's getting older. And she says, before Karen can say anything, she says, do me a favor. She says, don't get mad at me now. But I don't, please understand, I don't want to play the role of Cora. And Karen goes, what? And Margot misinterprets. She thinks she's going to yell at us. No, she said, it's a great play, it's a great role, but it really belongs to a younger actress. I'm I want to, spend more time. I'm a married woman. I'm going to be. I want to spend more time, with my husband and everything. And you can see how Margot has taken a flight into health. Because she was neurotic as hell, man. I mean, she was, I don't know the psychological terms, but she was disturbed about the aging process and the fading beauty. And really, really more than even most, beautiful women are. She was really troubled. And she's realized, no, aging is natural. Yeah, my beauty's gonna, fade. At least I might still be beautiful, but I'm not gonna be beautiful like I was at 25 or 30. And she's come to terms with that, and she'll continue to perform, but she'll play, roles appropriate to her age. And Margot's much more serene. She's much happier now. I'm glad to see it. We're all glad to see Margot, the growth of Margot's character. Meantime, so the snake gets the role of Cora, which is what she wanted, and they open, out of town in New Haven, and Addison DeWitt has done his homework, and we should mention first, Eve tried to seduce Bill away from Margot. He turns her down. He turns her down cold. He said, I'm in love with Margot. So you can forget it. Then she tries to seduce Lloyd away from Karen. Now, we don't see what actually happens in that meeting, but it's very doubtful that Lloyd was willing to leave Karen at all.
Yeah, but then there was that scene where he takes off when he gets the call.
He goes to see her, but we don't know what happens.
No, they don't show what happened, but we do have Eve later claiming something happened when she's talking to Addison.
Eve tells Addison that we stayed up till dawn talking, and that Lloyd agreed to leave Karen and marry me.
Yeah.
Now, given that Eve is a pathological liar, I tend to doubt that's true.
Yeah.
And Lloyd seems happy with Karen, so I don't think he was gonna leave her, and certainly not for Eve. But anyhow, here's what Addison knows.
By the way, I want you to tell the story, but I just want to say this is where the character of Addison DeWitt just explodes into your consciousness, right? He is just superb, and he demonstrates, like, basically, Eve, you may think you're this master manipulator, but babe, you ain't seen nothing yet, right?
Yeah.
He's just evil genius.
Yeah. He's Ellsworth Toohey to Eve's Peter Keating. For people who know the
excellent analogy.
Yeah, for people who know the Fountainhead, and he's done his homework, and he said, you were poor from Wisconsin, but your real name was Gertrude Zelensky or wherever it was. You weren't married. You've never been to San Francisco. There's no Schubert Theater. You said you saw Margot at the Schubert Theater in San Francisco. There's no Schubert Theater in San Francisco. That's easy enough to verify. You that's a lie. That's unworthy of you. And he said, I had to get in to see Margot. I had to say something. You worked in a brewery, but something going on between you and your boss. The boss's wife hired detectives to follow you. You were paid $500, which was a fair amount of money back then. Paid $500 to get out of town, and Eve says, she's a liar, the wife was lying. She never proved anything. So the implication, she had an affair with her married boss. But she got the $500. She came to New York and she started, to pursue. She wanted to pursue Margot, to become to take over Margot's life, and take over her career, take over her fiance, and so on. And Addison, says, I know the truth about you. In other words, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to publicize it. You possibly, back then, you're having an affair with a married man. People did it all the time, but that was today. You have an affair with some married person. Nobody going to blink an eye.
They elect you president.
That's right. In 19 several times, but with Clinton and Trump, but 1950, that was a real scandal, you know, and so you belong to me, I own you, in effect. And who wants nothing, who lives, sleeps, eats, breathes. Everything is about success on Broadway. She's going to be a star in the theater, maybe in the movies, and she'll do anything for her. I mean, Peter Keating in The Fountain, he lies, he practically kills Paul Lucius Heyer, in one scene. Eve is like that. She's going to climb. Keating and The Fountain are going to climb to the top of corporate America and do anything, including practically kill poor old Lucius Heyer, Guy Franken's partner. Eve's the same way. She'll do anything, climb to the top. Any lie, any manipulation, steal. Margot gave her a chance, steal her husband. Or Lloyd's. Karen's husband, whatever it takes. She get entrenched in the theater. Now Addison's a big, a big mover and shaker in the theater world. So this actually will benefit her because he's got so much juice as a top film theater critic. But it benefits him because he's going to entrench himself now. They're going to end up getting married. He's going to entrench himself with the next Margot Channing. She is the next big thing, in the Broadway theater. And so what happens here is the big snake eats the little snake, and he takes over. And they're going to get married. Now, Addison said, we're the same, Eve. We're incapable of loving or being loved. So they're going to marry. Maybe they have sex. I don't know. Do snakes have sex? Do snakes reproduce sexually? I don't.
They must. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. But thinking about snakes having sex, but I mean, I'm speaking obviously figuratively. But they are, more because biologically
they do something. Snakes. Yeah. I mean, maybe they come over and swim. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to do a little research in biology. But so these two snakes, speaking, biologically they're human, but morally they're a couple of snakes. Gonna marry and they'll be the first couple of the theater world. Yet, of course, they're both incapable of loving or being loved. It's just all about clawing your way to the top of the theater world by any means possible. Any lie, any duplicity, and like Peter Keating, who practically murders Lucius Heyer in The Fountain here, to get the impression that these two would do the same. If you had to murder somebody to claw your way to the top, if we can get away with it, get the impression that they would. And so at the end, she's the big star. She wins the award for the best actress on Broadway. She doesn't go to the party on her behalf. She goes back to the hotel room. What does she find in her hotel room? A young high school kid from Brooklyn, from Erasmus Hall High School, who's given herself a new stage name, Phoebe. And Phoebe is there. Oh, Miss Harrington, I run the Eve Harrington Club at Erasmus Hall. And we see she's going to do the exact thing to Eve that Eve did to Margot. She's going to insinuate herself into Eve's life. She's so sweet; she'll do anything for Eve. And at the end, as Eve's resting, she's wearing Eve's gown, and she's holding the award, and she's bowing in the mirror to the audience. We know Phoebe's going to do the same thing. What goes around comes around, right? Phoebe's going to do the same thing to Eve that Eve did to Margot. And then at the end of the movie ends happily in a certain way. Yeah, it ends happily because Margot's happy, and Eve is. This is a miserable life, She's gonna belong to Addison. The two snakes are together. She has a third snake here who's going to look like she's going to take over her life. And it's almost biblical in a way. The wages of sin are damnation. The result of this kind of duplicity is misery.
She did get that award, though.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And she's gonna get more. She's a very talented actress. She's gonna get lots of awards. But her life is all about lying, cheating, scheming, being married to Addison, being stalked by Phoebe. This is her life. She will have a great deal of commercial success, like Peter Keating does in The Fountainhead for a while. She will have a great deal of commercial success, but her life is the life of a snake.
Yeah, she more than met her match, and that's, it's like the tough guys, maybe, in prison, for instance. There's always someone tougher, right? And she thought that she covered every angle, but she ran into the wrong one because he ended up controlling her. You're mine now.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's real life and it keeps going, that's the type of story where she ends up dead from pills somewhere, right? Like that's the type of story that would turn out to be. That'd be an interesting story. They do that sometimes with novels. They rewrite and they expand them, or they tell you something different.
Well,
That'd be
you
interesting.
Remember Valley of the Dolls?
No, but I have heard of it. I've never seen it.
Yeah, I never read it. Jacqueline Suzanne, I think, wrote I think that was the name of the author back in the day. It was a very famous book. I think it was like that, about the miserable life. I think it was in the film industry, wasn't it? Miserable life and the pill popping and everything, and people, I think people dying from an overdose or even committing suicide. I believe that's what it's about, but I've never read it, so just going vaguely from memory from what I've heard. But I think you're right. I think it's a miserable. The life of a snake for a human being, is a miserable life, and yeah, I think she'll probably end up on drugs or booze or some combination of of the two, and probably be a short. She'll have a lot of commercial success for a while, but it's gonna be miserable, and she probably will end up dying young.
When I debated David Friedman on objectivism, one of his criticisms of objectivism is he has this idea that he calls the prudent predator. That if you have an ethic of self-interest, that there's people for whom it would be rational to be liars and cheats and thieves and whatnot because they could get away with it. And what I pointed out to him was that's a myth. Like the idea that there's this super genius out there that's going to live that way and be happy and function well, it's just non-existent. Now, obviously, this is fiction, but it's still an excellent portrayal of what actually occurs when people attempt to live that way.
Absolutely right. And so is the story of Peter Keating, in The Fountainhead. And David Friedman, as intelligent as he is, he's not getting Ayn Rand's theory of egoism. That Rand's theory of egoism is directly not only tied to, but grows directly out of human life as the standard of value. That which promotes human life is the good. And we, the values that promote human life are the good, and we need to pursue values, not sacrifice them, because human life depends upon value achievement. And so, a human being has to gain values by a human method, by rational achievement, by being productive, not just get them by
any means necessary.
Stealing. Yeah, right. Somebody said, "Well, why did you admire these billionaires? Because they made money?" I said, "Yes. If you understand what echoing Francisco in Atlas, if you understand what it means to make money as distinct from just getting it, yes." By being productive. That's the way we create values in this world. So David's not getting the underlying ethics here that gives rise to Rand's theory of egoism. But anyhow, being a predator, it's not human. It's the life for a great white shark or a lion in the jungle or a snake or something. It's not a human way to live.
To function, no.
Yeah.
Now, so we at the end we always talk about these movies in light of Ayn Rand's theory of aesthetics. Now, I enjoyed the movie, and if somebody were to give me one word for it, I would say fun. It was a fun movie to watch. I really enjoyed the movie. But I was laughing the whole time at a lot of Betty Davis's dialogue and the way she delivers it. I thought it was right. But as far as romantic realism goes, there's nothing inspiring about the movie. There's nothing motivating that, like you say, wow, there's no hero in the movie that you want to cheer for. I do think there is the moral lesson that we just talked about. But that's the negative, right? There's nothing that inspires you and makes you want to just go out and succeed. Nothing to admire. That's my take, anyways. What's yours?
Well, before I even get to your question, Mike, I just wanted to say that, when I was saying the movie is all about women, it is. It's not just that Eve and Margot were, the two major characters, but and I want to say something here. Margot is psychologically unstable. She grows through the story, but for much of the story, she's a head case.
Very insecure.
Yeah, extremely insecure. But she's not immoral. Margot's honest. Whatever she's feeling, she'll blast you with it. She's not gonna stick. If Margot doesn't like you, she's not gonna wait till you're sleeping and stick a knife in your back. She gonna tell you right to your face in no uncertain terms. She's honest. Whereas Eve is duplicitous and dishonest. So really glad that Margot grows psychologically through the course of the story, and she's happy at the end because she deserves it. And Eve gets what's coming to her. There's justice in this movie for both the good woman and
you got a good point there.
And the bad one. But this is all about women in a way that being a beautiful woman is a great thing. Or you don't even have to have the looks of Marilyn Monroe or Elizabeth Taylor or Sophia Loren or any of these these sex goddesses from film. Being an attractive woman is a really good thing, and you can see, and women value it, understandably. The hair, the makeup, the dress, the shoes, they value it, and as heterosexual males, we value it too. But beauty fades, and what does Margot say to Bill at one point? It's obvious you're not a woman, and and Bill said, "Well, I've been aware of that for some time." And Margot says, "Well, I am," and Bill says, "Well, I've been aware of that too." I mean, they're lovers, so yeah, I've been aware of that too. Our beauty, masculine beauty, fades too, but it's not as it's just not as enormous a value for a man as it is for a woman. And losing that attractiveness. And I've spoken to any number of women in my life as I've gotten older, and the women that I dated have gotten older, and they're almost always these attractive women. I say, "You're so pretty," and it's, "Stop flattering me. You look at the wrinkles, and my hair's gray, and everything." And I always say, we're making the mistake of believing that beauty, especially for a woman, but for anybody, is all about what we look like at age 25 or 30. And that's only part of beauty. There's beauty for a 50-year-old woman, 60, 70, year old woman. It's not the same. It can't be the same. It's metaphysically impossible. But it's still something. She still has a really good figure. She's still, okay, there's wrinkles, hair may be gray now and everything, but there's still, there's a physical beauty for many women, even as they're older. And Margot. So anyway, Margot agonizes. She just agonizes. Like many beautiful women do. And I was really happy first time I saw the movie. She comes to terms with it, and that the aging process is natural. You can't fight it.
Not everybody can look great like us as we age. Right?
Yeah, you can exercise, you can eat a good diet, you can get a lot of sleep, you can lay off the booze and the drugs. But when you're 70 years old, you're not going to look like you did when you were 30 or 35. That doesn't mean you're not still attractive or have a certain beauty. Margot finally comes to terms with that, and I think this is a problem. This is a problem that many attractive women, have in their life, and it's all about that, and not just the coming to terms with the aging process, Michael, but Margot talks to Karen when they're in the car. That the things we give up, a woman gives up to have a successful career. That's the stereotype for a lot of men is You know, if a woman can she be both assertive and feminine? Can she be successful and in a career and be married, be a loving wife or mother? And Margot says our greatest role is to be a woman, and at the end, I don't want to be alone. She's a heterosexual woman. She wants a man in her life to wake up in the morning and there he is, beside her in bed. And if she's out touring all the time, the show's on the road, it's hard to have a relationship when you're away from home all the time. And she wants to be not just a theater star. She wants to be a woman. She wants to be married and have love. Eve and Addison may be married. They're not going to have any love. Margot and Bill are going to be married, and they're going to have love. And I'm happy for Margot, and she deserves it. I could start to cry, but these kind of issues that exist for men too, but more for women. And that's why it's a very touching, very poignant story about women and the problems of being a successful career woman and being an aging, not just an aging successful career woman, but an aging actress, where beauty is so important in that profession. It's very tender story about women. And for me, I like women and empathize with the problems that women often have. I love this movie. Yes, I find it very touching.
Good movie. But next time
we're going back to the testosterone.
We're going to go back to the testosterone next time.
Yeah, but I didn't answer your question yet. And I think. The romantic element. Ayn Rand brilliantly defined romantic school of art as the school of volition. Well, we certainly see Eve making a choice.
Well, that element of it, yes, but also for her romantic realism is she wanted to, the way she put it out, she wanted to inspire. She thought the purpose of art is to inspire, to be the motivating fuel for man's existence. And I didn't get that from this film. No,
I agree. It's not. There's no real hero here. Margot grows over the course of the story, so she's close to being a heroine. But it's not like the Kirk Douglas character, Spartacus. He's standing up for freedom.
Not many are.
Yeah, true. But she says, Rand. So the essence of the romantic school of art is you show volition.
Yes.
And this story shows volition. Eve makes a definite choice, and so does Margot. When Bill says, "I've had enough. I can't deal with you anymore. You're a head case. I love you, but and he walks away, and she breaks down. And she's just sobbing. You see after that, Margot realizes, the way I'm going right now is this has been great for me as a young woman. I'm a big star. I love it. But I want something different now as I'm moving into my 40s. I don't need to play these 20-year-old characters anymore. I could play more mature roles, and I could marry, have a loving relationship, be happy, spend more time at home, with the man I love. And you see the main characters making choices, in this story. Addison, with the big snake, the big serpent.
King Cobra.
Yeah, King Cobra. Yeah, good point. King Cobra. He's he points out, when he says to Eve, you belong to me. There's no indication of in the story that Addison, grew up in some culture or some family where he was deprived,
No.
and he's upper crust. Even the name Addison DeWitt, he's waspy, to the core. He's looked like a wealthy, successful, well-educated, probably went to Harvard or Yale, kind of, belonged to the Skull. What was that? What was that?
Skull and Bones.
Yeah, Skull and Bones at Yale that the Bushes belonged to, right? Skull,
Yeah.
Skull and Bones. He's patrician, waspy, old money kind of guy. He just makes this choice that he's gonna rule the roost. He's gonna rule Broadway. He's gonna be King Cobra on Broadway as the influential film critic and having the leading actress, the Margot Channing of our day, under his thumb. Like Dominique Franken says to Ellsworth Toohey in The Fountainhead, Peter Keating, who's at that time the most successful architect commercially in the country. Dominique says to Toohey, Peter is mud clinging to your galoshes. And Toohey says to her, that's in your style, Dominique. I like to think of Peter as a soul wagging its tail. Well, he's got complete control of Toohey's got complete control of Keating. Addison's got complete control of Eve. He's King Cobra on Broadway, and he makes that choice. There's nothing in the movie that says he came out of nothing, and so he felt the need. Gail Wyman in The Fountainhead, comes from nothing, and people tell him he has new ideas, and people tell him, "Shut up, kids! You don't run things around here." And you can see why he thinks he needs to gain power. You don't see that with Addison DeWitt. This is something he craves, and it's a choice he makes. I'll do anything, in effect, to become King Cobra on Broadway. Do anything. And so you see these characters making their choices.
Sure.
They make their bed and they lie in it.
That's true.
And if Addison and Eve, that's literal. They're gonna be a couple.
Ugh. A couple that deserves each other.
Two snakes together in bed.
All right, Andy. So where can people find you?
Well, you said before. I see this time. I always forgot to bring my books along with me because you always give me the opportunity at the end. So here's my. Can you see this?
I can't. You got the glare, but I believe that's Why Johnny Can't Think.
Yeah, this is my book on education. Why Johnny still can't read or write or understand math.
Oh yeah, Leonard Peikoff wrote Why Johnny Can't Think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, correct.
I got it confused. Okay.
Here's my book on heroes, legends, champions, why heroism matters. So you can go to my website, which is andrewbernstein.net, and find out about all of Andrew Bernstein's books at andrewbernstein.net. And here is Red Meat
There's the
Village.
latest.
Yeah, by Tris Power, was a pen name of mine. And you can go to Tony. This is the Tony Just Volume 1 of the Tony Just saga of hard-boiled detective stories. And you can go to TonyJust.net to find out all about Red Meat Village and the subsequent entries in the Tony Just series. That's TonyJust.net. AndrewBernstein.net for Andrew Bernstein's books. I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, so I'm not hard to find.
You are not. Well, thank you very much, and we'll have you on again soon. We'll be getting back to some testosterone-fueled movies.
Yeah, some hero. So some of the great John Wayne westerns, like Rio Bravo or Red River or The Searchers,
yes.
or Fort Apache. Fort Apache is a fascinating film because John Ford directed. It's sad, but there's so much in it besides cowboys and Indians. There's so much in that movie. So yeah, we got to do one of those.
We will very, very soon. For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. I'm Michael Leibowitz. Till next time.